not be deceived. The murder of Sister Renee Good in Princess City, Minneapolis, is not just about one isolated incident. It is one step closer to American-style fascism, not just in terms of the rule of big money and big military, not just in terms of the grotesque wealth inequality, not just in terms of the scapegoating of brown immigrants, of black folk, of gays and lesbians, and the crushing of the working class and its trade unions. It's deeper than that. It's a spiritual issue that has to do with those who think that might makes right, that power can always trump any morality, and think that somehow everyday people, organized people, will cave in and give up and feel as if we're so hopeless and so helpless and so impotent. But no, I come from a great black freedom tradition that understands that no matter how much you gangsterize the world, we have a countervailing force inside of us, outside of us, among us. So yes, we respond with love of people in face of hatred of those people. Yes, we respond in terms of justice in the face of terror, and freedom in the face of unbelievable trauma. Yes, indeed. This is a moment in which more and more we're going to have to decide, are we willing to bear witness, to pay a cost, and to be true to those who came before in the face of this organized greed, this weaponized hatred, and this routinized cruelty in policy? Long live the name of Sister Renee. Yes, just like George Floyd, just like Breonna Taylor, just like so many others who have had the better cost of arbitrary power. Let us be always mindful of our spiritual, moral, and political power here in every corner of the globe.
Okay, we're back to breaking news. This is old news, though. This is not new news. This is old news. But I wanted to go over this and talk about this Honduras president who Donald Trump pardoned. It says here, officially pardons. Trump officially pardons ex-Honduran president of drug trafficking conviction. Now, you'll hear people talk about this all the time, and I'm like saying, well, you know what? We need to talk about it more. Is how can we substantiate this Venezuelan thing going on over here when he's pardoning convicted, not alleged, convicted drug trafficking. Okay, so let's read this article, because I think we need to make sure at least my community knows what's going on here. Okay, here we go. It says here, and this was last month. This is a last month publication, right? Published by Mr. Gregory Spoznowski. If I butchered the name, pardon me, but you can see what it says right here. President Donald Trump officially pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez of a drug trafficking conviction amidst criticism from Democrats and some Republicans that it contradicts his narco trafficking crackdown in the Caribbean. Wow. Records from the Federal Bureau of Prisons show that Hernandez, the former two-term president of Honduras, was released from West Virginia's high-security USP Hazleton Prison on Monday. So, not sure which money we're talking about, but once again, this article was written on the 2nd of December, 2025. Let's go on. The White House also confirmed Tuesday that Trump had assured, excuse me, one more time. The White House also confirmed Tuesday that Trump had issued the pardon. So, unequivocally, Donald Trump is the one who issued the pardon. In 2024, Hernandez was handed a 45-year prison sentence for his role in trafficking roughly 400 tons of cocaine into the U.S. But Trump has framed the case as yet another example of overreach from the administration of former President Joe Biden. Can't make this stuff up. Hernandez was, quote, according to many people that I greatly respect, treated very harshly and unfairly, unquote. This is Donald Trump talking now, right? Trump wrote in a post on Truth Social last week. So anytime Donald Trump feels as if someone that he respects treated very harshly and unfairly, and if they're in prison, convicted, tried and convicted, he gonna pardon him. Here we go. Quote, they said it was a Biden setup, unquote. He told reporters aboard Air Force One on Sunday, quote, and I don't mean Biden. Look, Biden didn't know he was alive. But it was the people that surrounded the Resolute desk surrounding Biden when he was there, unquote. So he's saying he doesn't mean Biden, that President Biden actually did this trying and convicting Hernandez. He was talking about the people that surrounded the Resolute desk where he occupies now when Biden was there. Just can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. Some in the president's orbit, including one-time advisor Roger Stone, had been advocating on behalf of Hernandez. Okay, so listen to this now. So now we have President advisor Roger Stone had been advocating on behalf of Hernandez. Now, imagine that. Imagine that, right? But criticism from across the political spectrum has accompanied the president's decision, which comes with the White House under fire for its strikes on alleged drug traffickers in the Caribbean and locked in a public pressure campaign against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Now, we know what's going on now. Now, we fast forward, they've got Maduro now, right? A target of the administration for his alleged work with narco-terrorist organization. Quote, why would we pardon this guy and then go after Maduro for running drugs into the United States? Look up every drug running. Excuse me, lock up every drug running. Unquote. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, wrote Sunday on X, don't understand, this is a quote, don't understand why he is being pardoned, unquote. Now, this is a Republican, Bill Cassidy, from Louisiana, not understanding this at all. And he makes the quote, he quotes it, right? He states it. You don't understand what's going on, right? Now, California Senator Alex Padilla, a Democrat, called the move, quote, disgraceful hypocrisy, unquote, in a post on X. Quote, I would have not done that, but I am not the commander in chief, and I do not have the pen that grants the pardons, unquote. Representative Maria Alvaro Salazar, Republican from Florida, told CNN on Sunday. Now, you can't make this stuff up, right? Who voted for this guy, right? Yeah, come on, can't believe this. Who voted for this guy, right? White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt doubled down on the pardon in a Monday press briefing, telling reporters Hernandez, quote, was opposed to the values of the previous administration, and they charged him because he was president of Honduras. That's what she's saying, right? She's saying, I'm gonna repeat, right? She's saying that she was telling reporters that Hernandez was opposed to the values of the previous administration, and they charged him because he was president of Honduras. Now, what kind of sense does that make? This is a quote. What kind of sense does that make? That he was opposed to the values of the previous administration, and they charged him because he was president of Honduras. That don't make no sense, right? Man, you gotta be listening. The whole world is laughing at the United States behind this. I mean, seriously. The whole world is laughing at the United States because of this. Right? Okay, so obviously that's the end of the article. But the whole world has got to be laughing at the United States of America right now. They have no respect for us. The only respect that they have for us is that we have arguably the strongest military in the world. And once they chink that armor, watch out. Yeah. They're not going to forget this. They are not going to forget this.
Minnesota is serious. You want to talk about fraud? Why is the FBI not cooperating with local law enforcement in Minneapolis? I mean, what is the FBI doing? Where is the DOJ on this? You want to talk about fraud? It's fraudulent to say some crazy talking point, if you don't comply, you will die. I was like scouring the police cars in all of the cities that I've lived in. I've never seen that motto on the side of a police car. Mine said protect and serve, keeping the community safe. Not if you don't comply, you will die. So if we want to talk about fraud, please let's talk about it, because the American people have tons of questions about how their civil liberties are being defrauded and how their economic rights are being defrauded at the hands of this administration without any oversight coming out of any of these committees. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to pick up on some of the concerns that my colleagues have been expressing concerning the independence and the thoroughness of any investigation into what happened in Minneapolis. I mean, we've already seen these concerns, and my colleague had an amendment about why it is so important that we have state and local authorities participating in the investigation, both for their on-the-ground expertise and to provide some legitimacy to the investigation that the FBI is undertaking when the Department of Justice and when the White House so quickly jumped in without any investigation and tried to characterize what happened, a characterization, that this was some kind of violent incident by Ms. Good, which was very quickly rebutted by every video, by bystander testimony. It just doesn't hold up. So it is really important that any investigation is legitimate and is perceived to be so. So I would have wholeheartedly supported the amendment to include the local law enforcement authorities, but I think we also need to make sure that we're not overlooking the fact that that an agency that historically investigates officer-involved shootings when there's a federal officer involved is the Office of Civil Rights in the U.S. Department of Justice. And that office has been sidelined here. They've always been involved in these. They have longstanding expertise. We are learning that several attorneys from that office volunteered to undertake that investigation, knowing that it was going to be a hot-button investigation, and they were told to stand down. I mean, this smacks so much of a cover-up and certainly further undermines any kind of trust in the process being led by the FBI. I mean, this is an agency that has gone into similar situations and issued unpopular opinions at times because they followed the facts. They didn't rush to judgment. They didn't try to whitewash either an officer who had engaged in excessive use of force or someone who had maybe ended up in a situation where they were killed or injured when there was justification for the officers. So I'm really, really concerned about the fact that the Office of Civil Rights, the people who protect all of our civil rights, who would protect and vindicate Renee Good's civil rights and those of other peaceful protesters, people who are standing up for essential American values, that they have been pushed out of this. And we've got reporting now that those attorneys, that more attorneys are resigning from the Department of Justice because they believe that they're being sidelined, that the Department of Justice is completely sidestepping what it's supposed to do. It's not meeting its duty in this very important moment, and I think it's the job of this committee to step up and to conduct those kind of investigations, and that's what we should be doing. So I would ask unanimous consent to introduce an article from The Guardian dated this morning at 9:48 entitled "DOJ Attorneys Resign Over Decision Not to Investigate Agent in Minneapolis ICE Shooting."
Without objection.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I don't know who was first here, but we'll go with the ladies first, and we'll go with Mr. Johnson. Gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to associate myself with the remarks of my colleague from Pennsylvania. I'm very concerned about the extent to which the Office of Civil Rights at the DOJ has been sidelined and underfunded. And Americans do not like what they are seeing on their TV screens. They do not like it. YouGov poll that came out in the last 48 hours showing a majority of Americans disapprove of the way that ICE is conducting itself, and they do not want this to continue. They feel like it is an attack on their civil rights, and rightly so. I also want to talk about the fact that it's very difficult to sit here and take seriously any efforts regarding going after fraud from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle when one of the first things that President Trump did when he was sworn in is he went after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, an agency that is independent, and its goal is to protect U.S. consumers. That's literally its mission. And at the beginning of his second term, Trump appointed an acting director who directed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to stop any regulatory activity and moved to fire 90% of the agency's staff. The staff that was literally standing up for Americans who had been victims of fraud and had returned $21 billion back to consumers who had been ripped off. And so we have an independent agency that was doing the work of protecting Americans from fraud, and this president decided to go after pretty much the one agency that was going to bat for all of us, preventing people from ripping us off from credit card companies, ripping us off from financial institutions and banks. So I don't know.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I certainly will. I yield to the ranking member.
It's such an excellent point you're making that they targeted the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was all about combating fraud against American consumers. But you could add to that that they sacked 17 inspector generals in all of the federal agencies whose precise job it is to ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse.
I'm so glad, Mr. Ranking Member, that you brought that up. That's exactly right. When you sideline the people, the inspectors general, whose job it is to do oversight, to ferret out fraud, and you prevent them from doing their jobs, how can we sit here and say that we're actually doing something to fight fraud? It makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't pass the straight face test. And it's difficult for us, you know, day in and day out. I feel like we come in here and we have to exist in some kind of upside down land. And people want us to forget the stuff that happened just a year ago from this administration, who came in gangbusters, preventing us from doing the things to protect our constituents from fraud. And then we sit here and we are asked to forget all of that. And I want to just be on the record today that what happened to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was a travesty. It was an agency that was sticking up for all of us, and it has now been hollowed out. And I don't know how you can sit here and say that you're fighting fraud when that is what has happened. Mr. Ranking Member, do you need more time?
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, what we've seen from the beginning of the administration, a dismantling of the infrastructure that is designed to combat foreign corruption, fraud. They took down the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and said that they wouldn't enforce that any further. There's been a dismantling of the governmental infrastructure against fraud and corruption. So now, essentially, they want to take all of these crimes whose prosecution and whose investigation they've neutered in the government, and then suddenly revive attention to it simply through the immigrants and the immigration system. And I think it's a pathetic way for them to proceed, and I appreciate your yielding to me.
And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized. And the gentleman.
I'm actually stunned that anyone would use the CFPB as the paragon of virtue. The CFPB is one of the most corrupt federal agencies ever created in the history of the United States. Violates the Constitution and how it was framed. It was intentionally created so that there was no congressional oversight. It was created in such a way that Congress did not have the power of the purse over the CFPB. The Supreme Court has found both of those two aspects of the CFPB to be unconstitutional, in the sense that it was not Congress that provided the funding for CFPB, but actually they basically identified their own budget, receiving money from the Federal Reserve, making it impossible for the president to remove the head of the CFPB in violation of the Constitution and Article 2 of the United States Constitution. I've never seen an agency that worked harder to violate the due process rights of those businesses and entities that were the disfavored entities related to the CFPB. I watched as individuals were forced to disclose attorney-client privilege in violation of the law. I watched as they targeted, again, disfavored industries simply because they didn't like them, yet never were able to prove any kind of criminal conduct for those entities. The CFPB is exactly contrary to our very form and structure of government. I cannot imagine that anyone would hold it up as protecting us from fraudulent companies when it itself engaged in fraudulent activities. The targeting of individuals across this country by CFPB has been an absolute tragedy. And I cannot believe anyone would claim that that is an example of a problem. What the president did in terms of addressing the CFPB was exactly what needed to be done. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I rise to speak to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. You know, this administration got elected based on fraud. It promised that they were going to deliver the Epstein files. They did not do so. They promised that they would cut the cost of groceries on day one. They have not done so. They promised to keep us out of endless wars. They have not done so. They've accelerated that. And so this is a administration based on fraud, led by a fraudster, a gentleman who was convicted of fraud, multiple counts, a gentleman whose organization was convicted of fraud, multiple counts, a gentleman who was charged and convicted of falsifying business records relating to the Stormy Daniels hush money payoff. I know we've forgotten about all of that. It happened so long ago, but this is an administration based on fraud. And as you start, that's how you finish. Also, that is the reason how, in the space of 1 year, after being elected into office, this president has increased his net worth by $3 billion. There's some fraud going on in America, and it's not limited only to immigrants in this country. And so what we have after the watchdogs have been removed, I mean, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau stripped of its ability to recover any more money from corporations that duped Americans like it had since 2011. I mean, $3.6 billion recovered by the CFPB to remedy fraud that victimized working people in this country. 7.7 million people in this country received part of that $3.6 billion recovered by CFPB. It has been a very effective agency on behalf of the American people. But one of the first things they did when they got in there is to kill the CFPB. Same way, as was pointed out earlier, that they systematically, intentionally, deliberately got rid of all of the inspectors general for agencies throughout the federal government. Why? So that folks could make that $3 billion within the first year. And if they made $3 billion, what others have made is just astronomical. So it's like the fox guarding the hen house, and there's no eggs in the hen house because of fraud. But it is a serious crime. We need to hold people accountable, including those at the top. And we don't need to use fraud as a pretext to surge thousands of untrained, ill-suited, ill-mannered ICE goons into the streets of Minnesota to continue what they did last week, which was to kill an innocent person. It's impossible to discuss immigration without relating it back to Renee Good, 37-year-old mother, poet. Last words she uttered was, "I'm not mad at you." And boom, less than 10 seconds later, she shot 3 times in the head. While another ICE agent, I don't know if it was the one that shot her or not, that called her a derogatory name after her car had already hit another car after they fired into the car and killed that woman. We can't let that go. You should not let it go. We should be considering legislation that reins in these out-of-control ICE officers. We should be dealing with legislation to hold them accountable for their excesses. And with that, I will yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I was just gonna, I'll associate my associate myself with the comments from the gentlelady from Wyoming on the CFPB. I think as the only member of Financial Services Committee as well as Judiciary, I think I was able to question Director Chopra on numerous occasions. Completely became a rogue agency, not funded by Congress, funded by a line item in the Fed's budget. And all they did was attack the insurance industry in America, the banking industry in America, and the credit unions of America. That was the function, was to somehow raise revenue by continually fining some of these agencies. So with that, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to remind folks that Renee Nicole Goods was an American citizen who was shot dead. Kind of reminds me of the 1960s in Kent State. But I want to take a few moments to address my colleague from California as he talked about Social Security fraud. I think he mentioned 1 million instances of fraud reported by the New York Times. I would say that that's probably an undercount. Most undocumented workers, the vast majority, come to this country to work. They're going to find a Social Security number to work under, and they will be hired by somebody who knows that's a false Social Security number because they need workers. And at the end of a few years of working, rest assured that those workers working with a false Social Security number will never reap the benefits that they will have paid into a Social Security system. And on the contrary, there's a lot of studies that show that those payments by these undocumented workers into the Social Security system are part of the reason the Social Security system stays viable to this day. But I also want to remind folks the underlying issue here, which is employees, workers that are needed in this country. Wisconsin, 90% of the dairy workers are undocumented. Meat processing plants throughout the country, the vast majority undocumented, working with fake Social Security numbers. California, my colleague from California, myself, we're Californians. California has the largest manufacturing sector in the United States. We have the largest agricultural industry in the USA. California, the largest high-tech, largest biotech, largest venture capital sectors in the US. Guess who are a lot of those workers? The vast majority they're undocumented. And of course, for all of you that love to pick on California, we send the federal government about $90 billion more in federal revenue than federal benefits that we get back. We're a net donor to the federal government, things that we forget about when we go after California. Actually, our state, despite everything, 4th largest economy in the world, we're doing pretty well. We could do better, but we're doing well. You want to stop the fake ID, fake Social Security numbers? Go mandatory E-Verify. Go after the employer. You want to stop the issue of fake Social Security numbers? You want to stop undocumented workers? Go after the employers, the small businesses in this country that are the backbone of this economy. Let's face it, folks. This country needs the workers. I can't understand why you keep vilifying these workers. Give them a legal way to work. Give them a real Social Security number. And I can tell you what's going to happen. The issue of fake IDs, the issue of incorrect Social Security numbers is probably going to disappear pretty quickly. So I ask my colleagues, you pick issues in our economy, in our society, but let's focus on the solution. We've talked about these problems for decades. It's time to do something. And this is not what we need to do. Go after the employers, go after the backbone of this economy. I would say that's not the right thing to do either. Thank you.
The gentleman yield.
Yes, I'll yield.
For a question, but one farmer said to me that you get an ICE raid bust at a farm. Now you've driven all the undocumenteds off of that farm and neighboring farms. There's not enough workers to do the work, so the farmers have to pay double or, certainly time and a half, but double or triple to get them to work through the weekends and so on. And those prices get passed on to consumers at the grocery store because there aren't enough workers to do the work anymore. Is that your sense of what's going on there?
Yes, Mr. Ranking Member, and I would say further that if you look at the price of groceries today, the price of meat going through the roof. Why? Because you have a supply is getting choked off, whether the processing plant or otherwise. This is a challenge. We got to do the right thing from an economic perspective.
Is read, and the gentlelady from Washington is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is straight out of the Republican playbook. Find a crime in the news, make that crime a deportable offense without requiring a conviction, and then disregard the fact that the people subject to deportation already upon their conviction of the crime. The bill is inspired by the allegations of fraud in Minnesota that a conservative YouTuber claims to have discovered 4 years after the Department of Justice under President Biden began investigating these crimes back in 2022. Fraud-related crimes are already crimes involving moral turpitude, meaning that legal immigrants, including green card holders, convicted of these crimes are already deportable. There really is no need for this bill. If we're going to talk about Minnesota, let's talk about how Republicans have deployed an estimated 3,000 Department of Homeland Security agents to Minnesota. Already, immigration agents have arrested or harassed too many Minnesotans, including a 20-year-old U.S. citizen who was detained for hours and then left to walk home in the snow. Horrifically, this surge of federal agents also led to the tragic and preventable shooting of Renee Nicole Good last week. As such, I am introducing a straightforward amendment after what my colleague said last week about wanting to have a fair, independent investigation into Renee Good's death. I would hope that they would support my amendment, which will do just that. The amendment would delay the effective date of this legislation until the Hennepin County Attorney, the Minnesota Attorney General, and DHS certify that Immigration and Customs Enforcement have fully cooperated with the Minnesota state and county-led investigation into the death of Renee Nicole Good. And just in case anybody has not been watching TV across the country, didn't follow what happened last week, Renee Nicole Good, a mother of 3, including a 6-year-old child, had just dropped off her small child at school and stopped to support her neighbors when she was shot 3 times at point-blank range and killed by an ICE agent who appears to have called her a, quote, effing bitch, seconds after killing her. Initially, the Trump administration signaled that it would work jointly with local Minnesota law enforcement on an investigation, as is customary in these cases. However, the very next day, the administration rescinded that cooperation agreement. And now the Trump administration is actively refusing to share information, video, or even work with the Hennepin County Attorney and Minnesota Attorney General, leading them to launch their own separate investigation. If the Trump administration is so confident in the propaganda that they put forward about last week, they should welcome a joint investigation. They should want to work with local officials in Minnesota. But instead, the opposite is happening. The Trump administration appears to be afraid of what an independent, transparent investigation will bring to light about what actually happened to Renee Nicole Good last week. Despite all the evidence to the contrary, President Trump has not backed away from his statements, claiming falsely that the officer was recovering from his injuries in the hospital, despite video evidence that clearly shows him walking away from the shooting apparently uninjured. Secretary Noem has outrageously claimed, without any evidence whatsoever, that it was an act of domestic terror, her words. The Vice President has falsely and outrageously stated that ICE agents have, quote, absolute immunity. Not true. Given all these lies, there is no world in which we can trust the Trump administration to conduct a fair, transparent, and unbiased investigation into the death of Renee Nicole Good. Not only do they not want to investigate the officer and hold him accountable if that's what is necessary in this case, they want to conduct a character assassination of Renee Nicole Good. Mr. Chairman, we need an independent investigation into what happened in Minneapolis. This is not the first time it's happened. In only the last 4 months, immigration agents have fired on at least 9 people with lots of lies and lots of evidence that debunks their narrative. Ms. Good lived by a conviction, as her wife said, that, quote, every person, regardless of where you come from or what you look like, deserves compassion and kindness. I hope my colleagues will support this amendment for an independent investigation into Renee Nicole Good's killing. I yield back. Oh, and I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent that an Axios article titled "Feds Bashed for Shocking Lockdown of Minneapolis ICE Shooting Probe" be entered into the record.
Without objection, gentlelady yields back.
ICE agents are faithfully enforcing federal law to protect the safety of the American people by removing criminal illegal aliens from our country, which is exactly what nearly 80 million Americans elected President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance to do. Radicals in the Democrat Party are furious over this. They don't want our border secured or criminal illegal aliens being removed. As a result, Democrats are impeding immigration enforcement operations daily, creating extremely heightened and dangerous circumstances that make it nearly impossible for the men and women of law enforcement to simply do their jobs. Democrats are calling to defund federal law enforcement agencies who are protecting public safety. And Democrats are calling to abolish ICE and defund the police. That will never be allowed to happen under this president and vice president. The Trump administration will redouble our efforts to get the worst of the worst, criminal illegal alien killers, rapists, and pedophiles off of American streets. The Department of Homeland Security will continue to operate on the ground in Minnesota, not only to remove criminal illegal aliens, but also to continue conducting door-to-door investigations of the rampant fraud that has taken place in the state under the failed and corrupt leadership of Democrat Governor Tim Walz. Taxpayers have been ripped off to the tune of billions of dollars in this one state alone, and that is going to end, and people are going to be held accountable. The Trump administration has activated thousands of federal agents, doubled the number of U.S. attorneys in the DOJ office in Minneapolis, and surged resources to hold fraudsters accountable and demand justice for law-abiding American taxpayers and citizens across our country. And that's what brings the Vice President out here with me today to discuss all the Trump administration is doing and to make an additional important announcement on this front. So please, Mr. Vice President, will be joining us now.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I want to echo some of what Carolyn said about what we're doing to combat the rampant fraud that exists in our immigration system, thanks to failed politicians and thanks to people who allowed the American taxpayer to be taken advantage of for far too long. I think it's important to understand why this matters to the American people. I am a father of 3 young kids, a lot of people in my generation. What is that going on there? Is that normal? Okay. CNN installed this broken camera just to throw me off my game, but it's not going to work. So here's the simple fact here. If you're a young parent struggling to afford childcare in the United States of America, there are programs that we have to make it easier for your kids to get in daycare, for your kids to get in preschool. Those programs should go to American citizens, not be defrauded by Somali immigrants and others. Make it hard for you to get the access to the resources you need. But number two, making it easier for people who shouldn't even be in this country to fleece the United States and our taxpayers to begin with. We have actually activated a major interagency task force to make it possible to get to the heart of this fraud. We have Department of Agriculture resources that are focused on SNAP fraud so that people who need food benefits can get them, but illegal aliens and other fraudsters don't. We have over 1,500 subpoenas that the Department of Justice has issued to get to the heart of the fraud ring. We've done almost 100 indictments, mostly Somali immigrants, but also a few others. And of course, we're looking in with broad investigatory authority to a number of the instances of wrongdoing that we've seen in Minneapolis. But we also want to expand this. We know that the fraud isn't just happening in Minneapolis, it's also happening in states like Ohio. It's happening in states like California. And so what we're doing in order to help coordinate this remarkable interagency effort from the Trump administration, but also to make sure that we prosecute the bad guys and do it as swiftly and efficiently as possible, is we are creating a new Assistant Attorney General position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start and focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way. I want to thank a couple of people for their cooperation, in particular Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, first of all, for getting a lot of resources to Minneapolis to start to investigate and prosecute this fraud, really at an industrial scale. We've never seen fraud like this in the history of our country. Pam has been doing a great job to get the resources there to uncover it, but importantly, creating a job like this often takes months, sometimes even longer. When we realized that we needed this Associate Attorney General position, Pam got this person up and running in about a week. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official, but this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people. And here's one final thing I'll say about this. I've heard a lot of people say that we need a special counsel to investigate fraud in the United States of America. I actually agree, and that's what this position does. It has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with two crucial differences. Number one, it will be run out of the White House under the supervision of me and the President of the United States. And number two, it's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure we get them permanently and they don't have some legal technicality they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an Associate Attorney General. I'll take some questions, but I want to make just one final observation here. When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before, and everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Back the f*** up! Shame on you! Force is not law! Force is not law! You are not following the law! Public affairs, get enough content. All their other cars, they should go straight. There's nothing blocking. They want the escalation. They want the violence.